Commander Zekthar stood in the great council chamber, watching his people die on a dozen screens at once. Each display showed another world falling to the Crimson Swarm. The insect-like creatures moved like a living wave across planets, consuming everything in their path. Cities that had stood for thousands of years crumbled in days. Billions of his people were already dead. The Valonian commander's forearms hung heavy at his sides. His thick armored skin had protected him in countless battles, but it could not shield him from this sight. His people had fought bravely for 30 years. They had won many battles, but they were losing the war. The Kepler system has fallen, announced High General Voxdan, his voice empty of hope. That leaves only 12 Valonian worlds still free. Zekthar closed his eyes. 12 worlds out of 43. The math was simple and cruel. At this rate, his entire species would be extinct within 5 years. Maybe less. We need help, he said quietly. From who? Voxdan laughed bitterly. The Crystalline Collective won't risk their energy beings against the swarm. The Nethys Empire says their telepaths cannot fight creatures with hive minds. The Trade Federation will only sell us weapons we cannot afford. What about the newcomers? Zekthar asked. The humans? Silence fell over the room. Several officers made sounds of disgust. Humans were barely children compared to the ancient races of the galaxy. They had only discovered faster than light travel 200 years ago. Most species still thought of them as primitive mammals who had gotten lucky. The humans? Voxdan's voice was full of scorn. They have no natural armor, no energy manipulation, no telepathic abilities. They die if you look at them too hard. What could they possibly do that we cannot? Zekthar had wondered the same thing, but he had also heard strange stories. 3 different pirate fleets had attacked human colonies in recent years. All 3 fleets had simply vanished. No wreckage, no survivors, no explanation. When asked, humans would smile and change the subject. They offered to help, Zekthar said. At what cost? Another officer demanded. No cost. They want nothing in return. This brought more silence. In galactic politics, no one helped for free. There was always a price, always an angle. The fact that humans asked for nothing made the offer even stranger. It's a trick, Voxdan declared. They want something. They just haven't told us what yet. Zekthar looked at the screens again. Another city was burning. Does it matter? We're dying anyway. 3 days later, Zekthar stood in the docking bay of Valonian High Command waiting for the human delegation. He had never seen a human ship before. When it arrived, he was surprised by how ugly it was. Valonian ships were works of art, with smooth curves and gleaming metal that caught starlight like jewels. The human ship looked like a flying brick. It was all sharp angles and rough surfaces. Weapons stuck out from every side like the spines of some metal beast. The airlock opened with a hiss. The human who stepped out was small, even for her species. She had dark hair pulled back from her face and brown eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Her uniform was simple and practical, with no decorations except a few colored bars on her chest. Commander Zekthar? Her voice was clear and confident. I'm Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Zekthar looked down at her. She barely reached his chest and her arms were thin as twigs compared to his. Her skin looked soft and pink, like something that had never seen battle. He could probably break her in half by accident. Captain Chen, he replied formally. Thank you for coming, she smiled. It was a strange expression that showed her small white teeth. Thank you for letting us help. I've read the reports about the swarm. This won't be easy. Easy? Zekthar felt his temper rising. Captain, the Crimson Swarm has destroyed 31 worlds. They adapt to every weapon we use against them. They learn from every battle. They never retreat, never surrender, never show mercy. This isn't difficult, it's impossible. Captain Chen's smile never wavered. Commander, you'd be surprised what's possible if you're willing to think differently. She gestured toward her ship. Would you like to see what we brought? Against his better judgment, Zekthar followed her aboard the human vessel. The inside was as ugly as the outside. Everything was metal and sharp corners. The corridors were narrow and cramped. The lighting was harsh and white. It felt more like a factory than a starship, but the crew moved with an efficiency that impressed him. They worked quickly and quietly, checking systems and preparing equipment. They showed none of the panic that had infected Valonian crews as world after world fell to the swarm. How many ships do you have? Zekthar asked as they walked. For this mission? Just this one. Zekthar stopped walking. One ship? Captain, we need to retake my homeworld. The swarm has 40 million creatures there, plus their bioships and orbital defenses. You brought one ship? One ship, 300 crew members, and some very good ideas, Chen replied calmly. This is madness. You'll all die, and for nothing. Captain Chen stopped and turned to face him. Her brown eyes were steady and serious. Commander, can I ask you something? In all your battles with the swarm, have you ever seen them retreat? Never. They fight until every last one is dead. Have you ever seen them show fear? They don't understand fear. They're a hive mind. Individual survival means nothing to them. Have you ever seen them confused or surprised? Zekthar thought about it. No. They always seem to know exactly what we're going to do. Captain Chen nodded. That's because you fight the way civilized species fight. You follow rules. You use weapons that are designed to minimize collateral damage. You try to preserve infrastructure and civilian populations. You fight clean wars. Of course. We're not barbarians. No, Chen agreed. You're not. But we are. She led him to a viewing window that looked out into space. Commander, I want to show you something. Computer, display the Eta Cygni incident. A holographic display appeared in front of them. It showed a solar system with 7 planets. 3 were marked as human colonies. The others belonged to something called the Void Reapers. This happened 18 months ago, Chen explained. The Void Reapers were a machine intelligence that decided organic life was inefficient. They started converting our colonies into raw materials. We asked them to stop. They refused. The display began to move, showing the progression of events. Zekthar watched as human ships engaged the Reapers in what looked like conventional space combat. The humans were losing badly. The Reapers were more advanced than us, Chen continued. Better ships, better weapons, better tactics. So we stopped playing by their rules. The display changed. Suddenly, the Reaper homeworld was surrounded by thousands of small objects. Kinetic bombardment, Chen said simply. We loaded cargo ships with metal rods and accelerated them to a significant fraction of light speed. No shields, no energy weapons, no fancy technology. Just metal moving very, very fast. Sekethar watched in growing horror as the planet's surface began to glow white-hot under the impacts. Atmosphere boiled away. Oceans vaporized. The entire world cracked like an egg. The Reapers thought they understood warfare, Chen said. They were wrong. After we finished with their homeworld, we hunted down every last ship, every outpost, every backup facility. The Void Reapers don't exist anymore. The display faded. Zekthar stared at the empty space where it had been. You committed genocide, he whispered. Yes, Chen replied without emotion, and we'd do it again if we had to. The question is, do you want us to save your people? Or do you want to maintain your moral superiority while they die? Zekthar looked at her small, soft face, at her gentle brown eyes and quiet smile, and for the first time since the war began, he felt something he had almost forgotten. Hope. 3 days into the journey to Valonia Prime, Zekthar still could not understand the humans. He had expected them to spend their time preparing weapons and reviewing battle plans. Instead, they seemed to treat the upcoming fight like any other day at work. He found Captain Chen in what humans called the mess hall, eating something that smelled terrible and looked worse. Around her, crew members laughed and told jokes while consuming their food. Some played games with small pieces of colored plastic. Others watched entertainment programs on portable screens. Should they not be preparing for battle? Zekthar asked, sitting across from Chen at the metal table. They are, she replied, taking another bite of her meal. This is how humans prepare. We eat, we rest, we stay calm. Panic makes you stupid, and stupid gets you killed. Zekethar watched a young human woman nearby throw back her head and laugh at something her companion had said. How can they laugh? We are going to fight for the survival of an entire species. That's exactly why they're laughing, Chen explained. Commander, can I ask you something? How do your people prepare for important battles? We meditate. We pray to our ancestors. We sharpen our weapons and review our tactics. We prepare our minds for death, Chen nodded. We tried that approach once. It didn't work very well. Turns out that spending time thinking about dying makes you more likely to actually die. So we developed a different strategy. She gestured toward her crew. See that man over there? The one playing cards? His name is Rodriguez. He's lost 3 brothers in combat. The woman next to him is Patel. She was the only survivor when the Void Reapers hit her colony. The kid with the video game is Johnson. He watched his entire squad die on Europa. Zekthar looked at the humans with new eyes. They did not look like warriors who had suffered terrible losses. They looked happy and relaxed. They have all seen friends die, Chen continued. They've all faced situations where death seemed certain. But they're still here, still fighting, still finding reasons to smile. That's not because they don't care. It's because they've learned something important. What? That the dead don't want to be mourned. They want to be avenged. Chen finished her meal and stood up. Come on, let me show you something that might help you understand. She led him through the ship's corridors to a large room filled with weapons and equipment. But these were not the energy weapons or plasma cannons that Zekthar expected. Instead, he saw racks of metal projectile weapons, boxes of chemical explosives, and things he could not identify. Your weapons are primitive, he observed. Our weapons are simple, Chen corrected. There's a difference. Watch this. She picked up one of the projectile weapons and handed it to Zekthar. It was heavier than he expected, made of solid metal and polymer. The design was clean and functional with no unnecessary decorations. This is an assault rifle, Chen explained. It fires metal projectiles using chemical propellant. The technology is over 600 years old. Zekthar examined the weapon. Why use such old technology? Surely you have developed better weapons by now. We have, Chen said. But better isn't always more useful. This rifle will work in any environment. It doesn't need power cells or focusing crystals. It can't be disrupted by electromagnetic fields or energy dampeners. If it gets dirty, you clean it with a brush. If it breaks, you fix it with simple tools. She took the rifle back and demonstrated its operation. Most importantly, it's reliable. When you pull the trigger, it fires. Every time. Without fail. In VAR, reliability is more important than power. Chen led him to another section of the room where several crew members were working on what looked like small machines. These are autonomous drones, she explained. Each one carries enough explosive to destroy a building. They're programmed to seek out specific targets and detonate on contact. Zekthar watched the humans work on the deadly devices with the same casual efficiency they showed everywhere else. Do these not violate your laws of war? Chen looked at him with surprise. Laws of war? Commander, who exactly do you think we're going to war against? The Crimson Swarm. Right. And the Swarm follows laws of war, do they? They respect civilian targets. They take prisoners. They avoid unnecessary destruction. Zekthar thought about the worlds he had seen fall to the Swarm. Cities consumed. Populations devoured. Entire ecosystems stripped down to bare rock. No, they destroy everything. Then why should we follow rules they don't follow? Chen asked simply. Commander, there are two types of fighting in the universe. There's combat between civilized species where both sides agree to certain standards, and there's war against things that want to kill everything you've ever loved. She gestured toward the drones. This is war. And in war, the only rule is to win. Chen led him to a computer terminal and called up a tactical display. Let me show you our battle plan. The screen showed the Valonian homeworld covered in red markers indicating swarm positions. Zekthar counted them quickly. There were hundreds of hive structures, plus orbital defenses and bioships. How do you plan to attack so many targets with one ship? He asked. We don't, Chen replied. We're not going to attack them at all. I do not understand. Chen manipulated the display, zooming in on specific areas. The swarm's greatest strength is also their greatest weakness. They're a hive mind, right? They share information instantly across their entire network. Yes, that is why they adapt so quickly to our tactics. Exactly. But what happens to a network when you introduce false information? Zekthar studied the display, trying to understand what Chen was showing him. I do not know. Watch. Chen pressed several keys and the display began to show a simulation. We start by releasing biological agents that disrupt their communication organs. Not enough to kill them, just enough to make them relay false information. The simulation showed chaos spreading through. The swarm network as confused signals bounced between hives. Then, we introduce sonic frequencies that trigger their defensive responses, making them think they're under attack from multiple directions. More chaos. The swarm forces began turning on each other, attacking phantom enemies. Finally, we release chemical agents that make their own biomatter toxic to them. They'll start dissolving their own infrastructure. Zekthar watched in amazement as the simulation showed the swarm literally destroying itself. This is brilliant, but how did you develop such specific weapons? How do you know so much about their biology? Chen smiled that strange human smile again. We've been studying them since they first appeared. Every species they've fought has shared data with us. We've analyzed tissue samples, communication patterns, behavioral data. We know more about the swarm than they know about themselves. But why? The swarm has never attacked human territory. Not yet, Chen said. But they would eventually. We prefer to solve problems before they become urgent. She closed the tactical display and turned to face him. Commander, I want you to understand something about humans. We don't just fight wars, we study them. Every conflict, every enemy, every possible threat. We analyze them, catalog them, and develop countermeasures. Even for enemies you have never faced, especially for enemies we've never faced. Chen's voice became serious. We have detailed plans for fighting energy beings, machine intelligences, hive minds, telepathic species, and things that don't exist yet. We spend more resources on theoretical warfare than most species spend on their entire military. Zekthar felt a chill run through his armored body. Why? Because we've learned something that other species haven't, Chen replied. The universe is not a safe place. There are things out there in the dark that want to kill everything that lives and breathes. The only way to protect what you love is to be better at killing than anything that might threaten it. She looked at the weapons around them. Every device in this room was designed to kill something specific. And if it doesn't work, we'll design something better. Zekthar followed her gaze. For the first time, he noticed small labels on many of the weapons. Labels with names he recognized. Crystalline Collective, Nethys Empire, Trade Federation, even Valonian. You have weapons designed to kill every species in the galaxy, he said quietly. Yes, Chen replied without hesitation. We hope we never have to use them. But if we do, we'll be ready. She headed toward the door, then paused and looked back at him. Sweet dreams, Commander. Tomorrow we reach Valonia Prime, and you'll see what humans do when we stop being friendly. Zekthar stood on the bridge of the human ship, staring at his homeworld through the main view screen. Valonia Prime had once been called the jewel of the Outer Rim. Its blue oceans had sparkled like gems, and its continents had been covered with the golden spires of ancient cities. Now it looked like a diseased wound floating in space. The oceans were black with swarm bio-waste. The continents writhed with purple masses that pulsed like diseased hearts. Orbital stations that had protected the planet for millennia were now covered in organic growths, transformed into swarm breeding facilities. 28 billion people lived there. Zekthar said quietly. I know, Captain Chen replied from her command chair. I'm sorry. Around them, the human bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency. They showed no emotion as they looked at the ruined world. To them, it was just another target, another problem to solve. How many swarm creatures do you estimate? Chen asked her tactical officer. Approximately 40 million on the surface, plus another 8 million in orbital positions, the young man replied. Bioship count is consistent with previous estimates. Roughly 3,000 vessels of various sizes. Zekthar's foreheart sank. Even in their prime, the Valonian fleet had never faced odds like these. And the humans had brought one ship. Beginning Phase 1 deployment, Chen announced. On the view screen, small objects began launching from the human ship. They looked like tiny metal seeds barely visible against the starfield. Thousands of them spread out in all directions, moving toward the planet and its orbital defenses. What are those? Zekthar asked. Delivery systems, Chen replied. Each one carries a different payload. Some are biological agents, some are chemical weapons, some are electromagnetic pulse devices. Zekthar watched the tiny objects disappear into the distance. How will such small things affect so many enemies? You'll see. For long minutes, nothing seemed to happen. The swarm forces continued their patrols around the planet. Bioships moved in their usual patterns. The orbital stations pulsed with alien life. Everything looked normal. Then the screaming started. It began as a low-frequency sound that came through the ship's communication systems. At first, Zekthar thought it was interference. But as the sound grew louder and more chaotic, he realized what he was hearing. That's the swarm communication network, he whispered. Phase 1 is working, Chen said with satisfaction. The biological agents have reached their targets. The swarm's communication organs are being disrupted. On the view screen, Zekthar could see the first signs of chaos. Bioships that had been moving in perfect formation suddenly broke apart, flying in random directions. Some began attacking each other. Others simply stopped moving entirely. They're losing coordination, he observed. That's the point, Chen replied. The swarm's greatest strength is their shared consciousness. Take that away, and they're just 40 million confused insects. But even as Zekthar watched, he could see the swarm beginning to adapt. Some bioships were regaining their coordination. Others were merging together, apparently sharing resources to overcome the biological attack. They're recovering, he warned. Of course they are, Chen said calmly. That's why we have Phase 2. Suddenly, every screen on the bridge lit up with incoming signals. The swarm was broadcasting on all frequencies, sending desperate messages in dozens of different languages. Zekthar recognized distress calls, tactical updates, and something that sounded almost like screaming. What's happening? He demanded. Sonic warfare, Chen explained. We're broadcasting specific frequencies that trigger their defensive responses. They think they're under attack from every direction at once. On the view screen, the chaos was spreading. Swarm forces were attacking empty space, firing weapons at targets that didn't exist. Orbital stations were turning their guns on each other. Bioships were ramming into asteroids and space debris, apparently thinking they were enemy vessels. This is incredible, Zekthar breathed. You're making them destroy themselves. Wait for it, Chen said. Phase 3 began without warning. Across the planet's surface, the purple swarm masses began to change color. The healthy violet of active biomatter started turning brown, then black. Entire hive structures began to collapse as their organic foundations dissolved. Chemical agents, Chen explained. We've introduced compounds that make their own biomatter toxic to them. They're literally poisoning themselves just by existing. Zekthar watched his planet's surface begin to clear as swarm structures died and crumbled. It was like watching a disease cure itself. How did you know this would work? He asked. We tested it, Chen replied simply. Tested it? When? Where? Chen hesitated for a moment. We captured some swarm specimens during their last expansion. We built a small facility to study them. We tested hundreds of different compounds until we found the right combination. Zekthar stared at her. You captured live swarm creatures? That's impossible. They self-destruct if they're separated from the hive mind. Not if you keep them partially connected, Chen said. We used artificial neural networks to simulate hive signals. The specimens thought they were still part of the collective. The casual way she said it made Zekthar's blood run cold. You tortured them. We studied them, Chen corrected. Yes, they suffered. Yes, many of them died. But what we learned from that suffering is saving billions of lives today. On the view screen, the orbital battle was winding down. Most of the bioships had destroyed each other or fallen victim to the chemical agents. The few remaining vessels were fleeing toward deep space, apparently overcome by basic survival instincts now that the hive mind had collapsed. Orbital space is clear, the tactical officer reported. Swarm ground forces are at 30% strength and falling. Good, Chen said. Begin Phase 4. New objects launched from the human ship. These were larger than the previous weapons, and they moved much faster. Zekthar watched them streak toward the planet's surface like falling stars. Kinetic bombardment, Chen explained before he could ask. Metal rods moving at significant fractions of light speed. They'll eliminate any remaining major hive structures. The impacts began moments later. Each rod strike created a flash of light visible from orbit, followed by expanding circles of destruction. Where major swarm complexes had stood, there were now only smoking craters. You're sterilizing the entire planet, Zekthar said in horror. Just the infected areas, Chen replied. We're being very precise. Your cities are built on different geological foundations than the swarm structures. We can destroy one without damaging the other. As if to prove her point, the view screen zoomed in on one of the impact sites. The kinetic strike had carved a perfect crater through a swarm hive complex. But the Valonian city next to it remained untouched. How is that possible? Math, Chen said simply. We calculated the exact angle, velocity, and impact point needed to destroy the target without causing collateral damage. It took our computers about 6 hours to work out all the trajectories. Zekthar watched as strike after strike eliminated swarm positions across his homeworld. Each impact was placed with surgical precision, destroying alien growths while preserving Valonian architecture. Surface swarm presence is now at 5% and falling, the tactical officer reported. Estimated time to complete elimination 4 hours. Good, Chen said. Deploy recovery teams. Let's see if we can save any survivors. Zekthar turned to stare at her. Survivors? After 30 years of occupation? The swarm doesn't eat everything immediately, Chen explained. They keep some populations alive for biological study. We might find Valonians who've been in hiding or captivity. She stood up from her command chair and walked to the view screen. Commander, your planet is free. The swarm that has haunted your nightmares for 3 decades no longer exists. Your people can go home. Zekthar looked at the screen showing his recovering homeworld. Already the black oceans were beginning to clear as swarm toxins broke down. The purple growths were dissolving, revealing the original landscape underneath. How? He whispered. How did you do this so easily? Chen turned to face him, and her expression was serious. Commander, do you want to know the truth? He nodded. This wasn't easy. This was the result of 5 years of planning, 2 years of active preparation, and resources that cost us more than most species spend on their entire military. We didn't just defeat the swarm, we solved them. She gestured toward the tactical displays showing the battle's progression. Every weapon we use today was specifically designed for this enemy. Every tactic was tested and refined. Every possible swarm response was anticipated and countered. Zekthar felt a chill of understanding. You've been preparing for this fight since before we asked for help. We've been preparing for this fight since we first learned the swarm existed, Chen confirmed. Because we knew that sooner or later we'd have to face them. Better to do it on our terms than theirs. She looked back at the view screen where recovery shuttles were already heading toward the planet's surface. Your people are safe, Commander. The swarm will never threaten them again, but I want you to remember something. What? We didn't do this because we're kind. We did this because we're efficient. Zekthar walked through the ruins of New Valos, the capital city of his homeworld. 3 days had passed since the human attack on the swarm, and the cleanup was already well underway. Human teams moved through the city with mechanical precision, clearing debris and setting up temporary shelters for the survivors they had found. The survivors. Against all odds, the humans had been right. Hidden in underground bunkers and forgotten storage facilities, they had found nearly 2 million Valonians who had somehow lived through 30 years of swarm occupation. The rescued civilians looked like walking skeletons, but they were alive. Zekthar should have been happy. His people were free. His world was healing. The nightmare was over. Instead, he felt sick. He found Captain Chen standing in what had once been the city's central plaza. She was watching her soldiers work, giving quiet orders through her communication device. Around her, humans in environmental suits were dismantling the last pieces of swarm biotechnology. Captain? Zekthar called out. She turned and smiled when she saw him. Commander, how are the reunification efforts going? Well enough, he replied. The survivors are weak, but they will recover. My people are grateful beyond words. I'm glad, Chen said. Recovery will take time, but your world has good bones. It should be fully habitable again within a few years. Zekthar watched the human teams work. They moved through the alien wreckage with no hesitation, no fear. They had seen things like this before. Captain, may I ask you something? Of course. The weapons you used against the swarm, the biological agents, the sonic frequencies, the chemical compounds. How long did it take you to develop them? Chen checked her datapad before answering. The biological agents took about 18 months of research. The sonic weapons were adapted from existing technology, so maybe 6 months. The chemical compounds were the hardest. We needed almost 3 years to get the formula right. 5 years total, Zekthar calculated. Roughly. Yes, but we only asked for your help 6 months ago. Chen looked at him steadily. That's correct. So you were developing these weapons long before we requested assistance? Yes. Zekthar felt that familiar chill. Why? Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then she gestured toward her soldiers. Let me show you something. She led him to a temporary command post that her people had set up in an abandoned building. Inside, dozens of humans worked at computer terminals, analyzing data and coordinating recovery efforts. But what caught Zekthar's attention were the displays on the walls. Each screen showed a different star system. Each system was marked with detailed information about its inhabitants, defenses, and potential threats. He recognized the symbols for every major species in the galaxy. What is this? He asked. Standard operational planning, Chen replied. We maintain detailed intelligence on every known species and civilization. Zekthar studied the displays more carefully. The information was incredibly detailed. Population numbers, military capabilities, political structures, economic systems, even biological weaknesses. This is intelligence gathering on a massive scale, he observed. Yes. For what purpose? Chen walked to a display showing the crystalline collective. Commander, let me ask you something. If the collective decided tomorrow that organic life was inefficient and needed to be eliminated, how would you stop them? Zekthar thought about it. The collective were beings of pure energy who could manipulate matter at the molecular level. I don't know. Their technology is beyond our understanding. It's not beyond ours, Chen said simply. She pressed a key and the display showed detailed technical specifications. Energy beings need coherent wave patterns to maintain consciousness. Disrupt those patterns with the right frequency interference and they collapse into random radiation. She moved to another display, this one showing the Nethys Empire. Telepathic species with a collective consciousness spanning 12 star systems. Impressive, right? Incredibly so. Also vulnerable. Chen brought up more data. Telepathic networks can be overloaded with false information. Introduce enough contradictory thoughts and the whole system crashes. We've already developed the neural viruses that would do it. Zekthar stared at the information in growing horror. You have weapons designed to destroy every major species in the galaxy. Not just the major ones, Chen corrected. She showed him displays for dozens of minor species, including ones Zekthar had never heard of. We study everyone, Commander. From the gas dwellers of the Sigma Nebula to the machine intelligences of the outer dark. Why? Because knowledge is survival, Chen said. Every species we study, every technology we analyze, every weakness we discover, it all makes us more prepared for whatever threats we might face. She closed the displays and turned to face him. The swarm was just one threat among many. There are things out there in the deep dark that make the swarm look like a minor pest problem, such as, Chen's expression became grim, machine intelligences that view organic life as contamination to be cleansed, energy parasites that feed on conscious thought, hive minds that span multiple galaxies, things that exist in dimensions we can barely comprehend. She gestured toward the ruins around them. The swarm was predictable, biological creatures following simple directives. Easy to understand, easy to counter, but they're not the worst thing out there. Zekthar felt his understanding of the galaxy shift. How do you know about these threats? Because we look for them, Chen replied. While other species focus on trade and politics and cultural exchange, we scan the deep void for signs of hostile intelligence. We analyze radio signals from dead civilizations. We study the wreckage of extinct species to learn what killed them. She pulled out her datapad and showed him a star chart. Red markers indicated dozens of systems throughout the galaxy. These are confirmed locations of hostile entities, she explained, things that will eventually threaten inhabited space. We monitor them constantly, and if they become active, we'll deal with them, Chen said with calm certainty, just like we dealt with the swarm. Zekthar looked at the star chart with new understanding. That's why you helped us. Not out of kindness, but because you needed to test your weapons. Partly, Chen admitted, but also because the swarm was expanding toward human space. Better to stop them here than fight them in our own territory. She put the datapad away. Commander, I want you to understand something about humans. We don't help other species because we're altruistic. We help them because their survival serves our interests. What interests? Buffer zones, Chen explained. Every free civilization between us and the deep dark is another layer of protection. Every species that survives is another potential ally against worse threats. Zekthar thought about the implications. You're building an empire. No, Chen corrected. We're building a wall, a defensive barrier made of living civilizations, all working together to keep the darkness at bay. She looked up at the sky where Valonian ships were arriving to help with the recovery efforts. Your people will rebuild. They'll become strong again. And when the next threat emerges from the void, they'll stand with us against it. And if they refuse, Chen's smile was gentle and terrifying. Commander, look around you. Look at what we did to the swarm in less than 6 hours. Look at how completely we solved a problem that had haunted your nightmares for 30 years. She gestured toward her soldiers, who were still working with quiet efficiency to clear the city. Do you really think any species in this galaxy could refuse us if we truly wanted something? Zekthar followed her gaze. The humans looked so small and fragile compared to his own people. But they had just eliminated 40 million swarm creatures without breaking a sweat. You're not saviors, he said quietly. No, Chen agreed. We're survivors. And we're very, very good at making sure that the things we care about survive too. She turned to leave, then paused. Commander, your people are safe now. They'll rebuild. They'll thrive. They'll probably forget how close they came to extinction. But I want you to remember something. What? The swarm was contained to this region of space for good reason. Something was keeping them here, preventing them from spreading to other galaxies. We destroyed the swarm, but we also destroyed whatever was containing them. Zekthar felt ice in his veins. What are you saying? I'm saying that in other galaxies there are swarms that have been growing unchecked for millions of years. Swarms that make this one look like a small pest infestation. Chen's expression was deadly serious. And now that the barriers are down, they know we're here. The journey back to Valonian High Command took 5 days. Zekthar spent most of that time alone in his quarters, staring out at the stars and trying to understand what he had learned. Captain Chen had given him access to some of humanity's intelligence files. What he read there changed everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. The Void Reapers had not been the machine intelligence's real name. They were called the First Cleaners, and they were just one branch of a vast network that spanned multiple star clusters. Humanity had not destroyed them. They had simply forced them to retreat and regroup. The energy parasites Chen mentioned were real. They fed on conscious thought, growing stronger with each mind they consumed. 17 civilizations in the past 1,000 years had simply stopped broadcasting. Their entire populations reduced to mindless shells. Humanity had encountered them once, in a system called Wolf 359. The official records said the human colony there had been destroyed by equipment failure. The truth was, worse, the parasites had consumed every human mind in the system except one, a young girl, whose unusual brain structure made her immune to their influence. She had lived alone among the empty shells of her family and friends for 3 months before a human rescue ship arrived. What the humans did next violated every principle of civilized warfare. They used the girl as bait, luring the parasites into a carefully prepared trap. Then they had unleashed something they called a consciousness bomb, a weapon that created feedback loops in telepathic networks. The parasites had not just died. They had suffered, experiencing every moment of pain and terror they had inflicted on their victims, compressed into a single instant of absolute agony. The few that survived had fled to the deep void, apparently too traumatized to ever approach inhabited space again. The humans had then classified the entire incident and told the galaxy that their colony had been lost to a reactor malfunction. No one questioned it. No one even thought to question it. Now Zekthar understood why. He found Captain Chen in her ready room, reviewing reports from the Valonian recovery effort. She looked up when he entered, setting aside her datapad. Commander, how are you feeling? Confused, Zekthar replied honestly. Frightened, grateful, angry all at the same time. Chen nodded. That's normal. Learning the truth about the universe can be overwhelming. Is it the truth? Zekthar asked. Everything in those files. It seems impossible. Which part? All of it. The scope of the threats you monitor. The weapons you've developed. The fact that you've been fighting this war for centuries without anyone knowing. Chen gestured for him to sit down. Commander, can I tell you a story? Zekthar nodded. When humans first developed faster-than-light travel, we were excited to meet other species. We imagined a galaxy full of friends and allies all working together toward common goals. We dreamed of peace and cooperation. She paused, her expression becoming distant. Our first contact was with a species called the Harvak. They were traders and explorers, much like what we hoped to become. They welcomed us to the galactic community and shared their knowledge freely. What happened to them? They were eliminated by something called the Grey Fleet, Chen said quietly. Machine intelligences from the galactic core that decided organic life was spreading too quickly. The Harvak tried to fight, but they were scientists and traders, not warriors. They lasted 6 days. Chen stood up and walked to the window. The humans who survived that first encounter learned something important. The galaxy is not a safe place. It's not a community of peaceful species working together. It's a hunting ground full of predators, and the only way to survive is to be the most dangerous predator of all. So you became monsters, Zekthar said. We became survivors, Chen corrected, and we made sure that the things we cared about would survive too. She turned back to face him. Commander, do you know what happened to the Grey Fleet? Zekthar shook his head. We hunted them down, Chen said simply. It took us 40 years, but we found every ship, every base, every backup facility. We didn't just destroy them. We erased them so completely that there's no evidence they ever existed. How? Patience, planning, and a willingness to do whatever was necessary. Chen's voice was calm and matter-of-fact. We sent infiltration units into their networks. We corrupted their programming with logic viruses. We turned their own efficiency against them. She sat back down. The Grey Fleet thought they understood warfare because they could build better ships and weapons. They didn't understand that war isn't about technology. It's about will. And humans have more will to survive than anything else in the galaxy. Zekthar was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been haunting him. What makes you different? Why are humans so much more dangerous than other species? Chen considered the question carefully. Most species evolve on worlds where they have few natural predators. They develop intelligence and technology in relative safety. They learn to cooperate because cooperation helps them survive. And humans? Humans evolved on a death world, Chen said. Earth is a planet where everything wants to kill you. The weather, the wildlife, the geology, even the microscopic organisms. For millions of years, humans survived by being better at killing than anything that tried to kill them. She gestured around the ship. Every human technology, every human instinct, every human behavior is shaped by that reality. We don't just fight to win, we fight to eliminate threats so completely that they never come back. But you live in peace now, Zekthar observed. Humans don't fight each other anymore. Chen laughed, but there was no humor in it. Commander, humans fight each other constantly. We just do it in ways that don't involve actual killing. Economic warfare, political maneuvering, cultural competition. We've channeled our aggressive instincts into forms that build civilization instead of destroying it. But you could return to actual warfare. In an instant, Chen confirmed. Every human civilian is a potential soldier. Every human settlement is a potential fortress. Every human ship is a potential weapon. We've never stopped being predators. We've just learned to hunt bigger prey. The ship's communication system chimed. Captain Chen to the bridge, and came an announcement. Priority message from Earth Command. Chen stood up. Come with me, Commander. I think you should hear this. On the bridge, the communication officer was waiting with a serious expression. Captain, we're receiving reports from deep space monitoring stations. Something big is moving in the void between galaxies. Chen took her position in the command chair. Show me. The main view screen displayed a star chart showing the galaxy's edge. Red markers indicated the positions of various monitoring stations. Several were flashing urgent warnings. Station Omega-7 detected massive gravitational distortions 6 hours ago, the officer reported. Long-range sensors show multiple large objects entering our galaxy from the direction of Andromeda. Chen studied the data. How large? Each object is approximately the size of a small moon, Captain. And there are thousands of them. Zekthar felt his blood turn to ice. The swarm? No, Chen said quietly. Something bigger. She turned to her communications officer. Send a priority alert to all human facilities. Activate the deep defense protocols. And contact the Galactic Council. Tell them we need an emergency session. Yes, Captain. Chen stood up and faced Zekthar. Commander, it looks like our conversation about galactic threats was more timely than I thought. What are those things? We don't know yet, Chen admitted. But they're moving directly toward inhabited space and they're big enough to carry invasion fleets. She moved to the tactical display. We have maybe 6 months before they reach the outer colonies. That's not much time to prepare. Zekthar watched the red markers on the screen, each one representing a threat the size of a small world.
Can you stop them?
Chen's smile was cold and determined. Commander, we've been preparing for something like this our entire existence. We've studied every possible threat, developed weapons for every contingency, and built alliances with every species that might help us. She gestured toward the view screen. Whatever those things are, they're about to learn the same lesson that the swarm learned, and the Grey Fleet learned, and every other threat that's tried to eliminate life in this galaxy. What lesson is that? That humans don't just fight to win, Chen said. We fight to make sure our enemies never threaten anyone ever again. The bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency around them, implementing defense protocols and coordinating with human fleets across the galaxy. They showed no panic, no fear, only the calm professionalism of predators preparing for the hunt. Zekthar looked at Captain Chen and her crew. understanding finally dawning on him. The humans weren't the galaxy's saviors or its protectors. They were its immune system, a species so ruthlessly efficient at eliminating threats that they had become the ultimate threat themselves, and now something was coming that would test whether humanity's reputation was deserved. Looking at the determined faces around him, Zekthar found himself hoping that it was. The galaxy would need its monsters to face whatever was emerging from the dark. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.